Hello everybody, welcome to Nature's People. Today we're going to talk about the complexity of the brain. Why is it so complex and why is it so hard to study and to have a glimpse on? Um, what most people do not understand is that generally life systems are organisms or systems basically saying that are very adaptive. For instance, if you're having an infection or you're taking an antibiotic, but I'm primarily saying this just for you to have a glimpse on how complex is the brain. You have an infection, doctor prescribes you an antibiotic, and then you take it, and then you develop antibiotic resistance. Why is that? Because the organisms, which is the bacteria or whatever, has created certain enzymes to break down the chemicals you're putting in the system, so it survives. So it's basically that. Now, there are three very complex systems in the world that are very hard to study. Number one is the brain, by a big margin, by far. Secondly, the universe, and third, the oceans. So I'll start with the third. The oceans are hard to study because when you go out there to map the oceans, we generally have a very challenging aspect, which is PSI. For those of you who do not know what PSI is pressure per square inch. The pressure per square inch increases so drastically the deeper you go, deep into the oceans, that makes everything just so hard. You can't put cameras in there, you can't send divers in there, you can't do nothing. So just might as well give up. But there are a lot of technologies to develop very pressure resistant cameras and things to go down there and investigate and map and study the oceans. Now secondly is the universe. Why is the universe hard to study? Because everything is far away from us. No matter how much powerful telescopes or things we developed to sort of satellites to sort of map and take pictures of the universe, is just hard. But nothing is as hard as the brain. Now getting to the brain, why is the brain so hard to study? By a big margin, just to give you a perspective, if the complexity of the universe is a golf ball or a ball, the brain is the stadium. It's so complex that it's literally nearly impossible to study. Scientists have an estimate that we could possibly know about the brain in a period of probably 1,000 to a couple of 100,000 of years, just to know how the brain works and functions. Now getting deep into the main point, why is the brain so complex? In the brain we have this very specialized type of cells called neurons. So neurons perform very specific highly specialized type of cells that perform very different functions to preserve and to maintain life. So basically, for instance, if you're to climb a mountain in a very cold place, the oxygen levels decrease in your lungs. So the brain, in order to adjust, it will expand the pathways, the airways of your lungs to absorb more oxygen and the surface area, so it gets more oxygen the higher you go. Why? Because the brain is basically an adaptive system network. Now, why is it complex? Because in the brain, in our heads and deep into our skulls, we have over between 85 to 100 billion neurons. There's so many neurons, and they are constantly communicating with each other. We have 100 billion neurons, and each neuron can have between a few to a couple of thousands and to hundreds of thousands, up to 10,000 neuronal connections. So for instance, you have a neuron, it has synapses. So a synapse, for those of you who do not know, a synapse is a connection between a neuron and different types of neurons. So a neuron is communicating with other with 10,000 other neurons, and those other neurons are communicating probably with 5,000 other neurons, and each neuron has a pathway, so it's signaling. So a neuron will excite, will fire, but at a different frequency. It's like when you plug the light and then the current, the voltage is constantly changing, because in the brain you have over 100 neurotransmitters. So a neurotransmitter is a molecule that changes the amount of voltage that passes through a neuron. So that's the complexity of the brain. I'll be more detailed. This was just the basics for you to know. And the brain is so complex that there is, in the whole structure, there could be over 850,000, nearly a billion synapses. And getting back to the explanatory part, a synapse is a connection between one neuron to the other. And to further complicate the matter, there are so many neurons in the brain that there are stars out there in our galaxy Milky Way. So that's the part one of the complexity of the brain in a nutshell. Stay tuned and subscribe.